Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, November 10th, 2024, coming to you live from Florida Media here in Rockville Center. Got another stupendous show coming up for you tonight. Arthur Staple of The Athletic will be joining us. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me most of the time is Mr. Stefan Roster.
Not always.
How do you do?
Honestly, I missed you.
I missed you too, pal.
One, you got stuck with Christian. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was rough.
Did
Thanks
you call
for
him
that.
Stefan, by the way, or you called him Christian?
I called him Christian the whole show.
That's more offensive
Yeah, I
to
did
me.
a great job.
But, yeah, you got a haircut, Sean.
I did,
You
really,
actually
this time.
got a haircut.
Yeah.
How you feeling about
I'm
it?
feeling pretty good. And experience points, what do you think?
No, we'll save that for the actual players. That means
All right,
something,
fair
Sean.
enough.
Jeez.
All right, well, welcome to the show. Another interesting week for the New York Islanders. But before we dive into that, I want to rattle off our wonderful sponsors, starting with Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Also proud to be sponsored by the brand new Center Station Bar and Grill in Rockville Center. Catch every Isles game with great food and drinks at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center all season long. And also proud to be sponsored by Razor and Kniff Attorneys at Law. Ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com. That is RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. And if you're hanging out with us in the chat live, you want to ask some questions during the Questions Brewing segment, type in Questions Brewing followed by your question, and we will more than likely answer that question. And now we move right in to Experience Points presented by Main Street Board Game Cafe, where we make our points about the Islanders' experience last week. But before we do, Stefan, I believe you have an injury update for us.
I do. Alexander Romanov, who missed the other game the other day, has missed 4 in a row. He is making the trip out west.
We like that.
We don't know when he'll be back, but we know that there's a good chance he'll be back at some point.
Might just be coming for vacation.
To Western Canada. I mean, maybe Western Canada is where he
might
wants
like the
to
cold.
be. Yeah, from Russia. It probably makes a lot of sense. The other update, which is not as good, is that Mike Riley goes from day-to-day to out indefinitely. They didn't tell us he has a concussion, but he has a concussion.
Okay.
And sucks because this is a guy that meant a lot to this lineup, meant a lot to this room, was playing well, and with concussions, you never really know. So hopefully for speedy recovery for him, but it seems like he's going to be out a while.
But no further word on why he's been moved from one status to the other. Just
I think the day-to-day is just for them to evaluate. I mean, concussions really are a day-to-day thing, and I think they got to the point where it's like, you know what? We're going to shut them down. There's no update on Adam Pelech, Matthew Barzal, Anthony Duclair. Those are 4 to 6 week timelines. They won't be back on this trip, though.
Okay, fair enough. Well, there's your injury update. Now, let's dive into the week that was and go all the way back to
Experience points.
That's right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go all the way back to Sunday at the Garden. 5-2 loss for the Islanders. We had a fun time over at Center Station Bar and Grill for the viewing party that Stefan was so kind to call into from the Garden. But the result of the game, not so friendly. This is a game that opened up with a shorthanded goal against in the early going in the first period, and didn't really get much better from there. They made it competitive in the second, scored that late goal to make it 3-2 going in. You thought maybe they had a chance, but then the Rangers opened it up and, of course, end up getting the win.
Special teams. That's what this game come down. You look at the actual game at a 5-on-5, the Islanders played well. They had chances to score. I know Horvat had 2 breakaways. Shesterkin was the difference in this game, but we've talked about it a lot. If your power play is not going to be a positive for you, like if it's not going to score goals, you can't be allowing shorthanded goals. It just can't happen. And the mistake that was made by Noah Dobson is one that a veteran defenseman at this point just can't be making. You throw the puck. It wasn't a great pass that, he couldn't hold it and comes out of the zone, but you can't throw it up the middle of the neutral zone like that. You have to get it deep or figure out something else to do. Comes back to bite them on a tic-tac-toe passing between Zibanejad and Kreider. It was tough. The Islanders played good enough to win that game at 5-on-5, but special teams has to be much better if they want to find a way to beat those good teams. Yeah,
the power play goes 0 for 5, and against the Rangers, that's a team you got to cash in at least once. And let's talk about the fact that this is another game where they let up an empty net goal. They're down a couple. Patrick Waugh likes to pull his goalies early, whether they're down 1 or 2 goals. But with 2 goals, there might as well be 10 minutes left in the third period, it feels like. But this is another situation where he pulls the goalie early. And, the stats say that if you do pull your goalie, you have a better chance of scoring goals. But I think specifically in the Islanders' case, that is just not the case. I look at it as a death knell for the Islanders if and when they do pull the goalie. It seems like they always just find a way to cough that puck up, and eventually it ends up sailing down to the other end of the ice and into the net. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I'll tell you why Wad does it, because he's explained it. So not my words, his words, is the fact that he feels like he owes it to his team. Give him the chance.
Okay.
I think
that's nice.
It's commendable. I mean, when you do it with 10 minutes left, it kind of means you don't believe in your team because we're not going to score. You might as well. But I think the whole thing with Wad is that he wants to reward his players that, hey, I believe that you could do it. It just for the Islanders, they just keep not doing it.
They don't do it.
Yeah, they don't do it.
They don't do it.
Yeah.
And it almost always ends up in a goal on the other side. Forget about the fact of them getting either the goal to make it a one-goal game, or let alone the tying goal, right? It always just seems to end up the other way. Does that mean you don't pull your goal anymore? Maybe not necessarily, but it seems like they got to work on 6-on-5.
And we'll get to it the other way when it's them that has the net empty against them.
Yeah, on both sides of the coin, not so great.
Yeah, it's a one-sided coin for the other team.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so let's move on to Tuesday. We get into some positive news. They welcome the Pittsburgh Penguins into UBS Arena. They get a win. Not only did they get the win in the shootout, but this is where they flipped the script and they actually came back on a team.
They did.
And tied the game and get the win late. So that was nice to see. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that game.
Yeah, Horvat has 2 points, 2 assists in that game, wins it in the shootout. He tried the Peter Forsberg. It shouldn't have worked, but it worked. Nedeljkovic, he raises the left pad there. This is one of those wins where you pesky Islanders. You bring that word back, gutsy. You felt like that was a game where, okay, we had just lost a bad one to the Rangers. We had beaten Buffalo. We have all these injuries. That's one that could spark us. That's something we could build on. I thought you had a lot of guys step up. You had Holmstrom, right? Other guys stepping up in that game, even if they don't score goals. Like Holmstrom doesn't score in that game, I believe. He scored in the... No, excuse me.
No, he had a power play goal.
He had the power play goal.
First of the season.
Right. It's first of the season, and that's one of those games where you think, okay, depth guys... When you see depth guys coming through, that's really important. And those are signs of good teams when there are injuries like that. But also the top guys came through. Like I said, Horvat had a really good game. And that line's been unreal since they've been put together with Lee and Pajot. And you see guys step up, and it's also with Isaiah George's debut.
Yes.
We will get to him later in the show. But
15 minutes and 41 seconds on ice.
And he starts that game alongside Grant Hutton, and by the end of the game, he's played with all the big dogs, getting to play with Dobson.
Gets a shift in overtime.
40-second shift in overtime for a guy that, again, not only was this his first NHL game, it was his 5th ever professional game. He only played 4 games in Bridgeport. A year ago, he was playing in junior. So, like I said, we'll get to him later, but that was his debut, and that was a fantastic debut, that one he built on going into the game against Ottawa.
No doubt, and just last note on that is this is a game that goes into overtime / shootout here, and if you want to start reaching for little positives this season, these are games that they lost most of the time last season.
PK in overtime, too.
That's true, and not for nothing. I was in the stands. I turned to my buddy. I was like, this game is over. But they killed the penalty.
Liar.
Couldn't capitalize on their own power play. They had one as well, but they get the second point, which is something they had a really hard time doing in the extra sessions last season. So again, small victories here, but it gets another point in the standings. Doesn't go the other way further in the week. We'll get to that, but a positive there. They get the 2 points against a division rival in the Pittsburgh Penguins, and now moving on to Thursday, up into Ottawa, 4-2 win. Wow, more than one goal. And an empty netter.
More than one goal, an empty netter, and Oliver Wahlstrom scored a goal.
That's right.
Martin probably wishes he buried it, the puck in front, but it went right to Wahlstrom. It was a fantastic finish by Wahlstrom, first goal of the year, and you hope that gets him going a little bit offensively. But this was one of those wins where you had to see him build. You beat Buffalo, losing 3 defensemen in that game. You go into the Rangers, you lose that one. You beat Pittsburgh. The worst thing they could possibly do is lose to Ottawa and go back and forth.
Of course.
One step forward, one step back doesn't do anything for you in the standings. They build on it. They get the big win, and I want the play that sticks out to me is they lose a defensive zone face-off at the end when it was a 1-goal game. Mayfield blocks a shot. Horvat empty netter from the D zone. Like, those are the big plays late in games. Last year where the Islanders would lose the face-off, give up the goal.
Right.
And we'll get to the blown lead in a second, but to see Mayfield, who you're paying a lot of money, not a lot of money, excuse me, the contract, he's back.
A lot of money over a long period of time.
Right. More money than we have. He blocks a shot, which you need in that situation, and then they get the empty netter to take a sigh.
Yeah.
We did this. So I think that was a huge way to build on that Pittsburgh win.
Yeah, and I believe that was their first back-to-back wins of the season, right?
Yes.
First winning streak of 2. of the season. Small victories once again. Point streak, indeed. That point streak continues into last night, Saturday, a 4-3 overtime loss to the New Jersey Devils, and unfortunately in very Islander fashion. Not only do they have a late lead in the third period, they have a late 2-goal lead in the third period that they built in the third period.
Right.
But something you got to hang on to. We'll get into what happened, why it happened, but this is just another example of the Islanders not being able to get out of their own way and just giving points away and losing points at the same time. They basically gifted 2 points to the Devils, and they took one away from themselves. And these are valuable points that are definitely going to come back when you look at placement in the standings, whether they're fighting for a wild card, whether they go on a run and challenge for the top 3 spots. I'm not saying they will, but this is a situation where, man, you're not even 15 games into the season here, and you're already just doling out points to the competition.
Like
left
Oprah.
and right. Yes, everybody gets a point.
Right. And I think the other caveat to this game was Sorokin was brilliant. And for people
all week.
Yes, but in this game, I mean, this might have been one of his better games
He was amazing.
of the year.
He was amazing.
And for the people on Twitter, which I know is just an absolute cesspool, people blaming him or saying, an impressive performance can't be 4 goals.
Yeah.
Look at the save on Jack Hughes early, the save on there's probably 5 or 6 saves where you're just thinking, no other goalie in the league is making, not even Shesterkin or whatever.
Right.
Like 1 or 2 goalies in the NHL are making those saves. I thought he was, he broke his back last year helping this team. I thought he was going to pull a muscle yesterday with all the sprawled saves. He didn't deserve the fate that he got. He was impressive, but yeah, that's a tough one when you have a goalie that plays like that. And you were trailing. You didn't play well 40 minutes, the first 40 minutes. You get the 3-1 lead. You're pushing. And then you collapse that defensive shell. We'll get to the blown, exactly what happened. But I have some stats quickly before we go to Arthur about the blown leads. 15 games played this year. They've had 14 leads in those 15 games. So they didn't lead in 14 games,
right?
But 14 leads. So that counts as a 1-0 lead. That counts.
Okay.
They failed to hold the lead 11 times. And that might not be a complete shock because 1-0 leads, things like that. But it's not great.
It's not great, but hockey's a back and forth game.
Right.
Teams are coughing up leads all the time. If you're sitting here telling me that they coughed up a third period lead in 14 of those 15 games or whatever it is, whatever the numbers are, that's alarming. But at the same time, the fact that they've failed to hold as many leads as you're talking about here is it just kind of plays into this narrative of just how poor they've been with being up a goal. And in a lot of cases here too, we're seeing them give up that tying goal almost like a minute or two after they get the go-ahead goal.
Right, and again, they scored to make it 3-1. So they had the leeway to F up once.
Right.
And they did it twice. And one more stat for you. They've lost 3 of those games where they had leads and blew it. And they've allowed 3 5-on-6 goals, which is second most in the NHL behind the Maple Leafs and the Wild. 2 teams that have played pretty well. So I guess that's good company to be in.
I guess so.
I'd probably not. But it's just the 3 5-on-6 goals, that's a concern because it's not once in a blue moon that they're allowing this. Teams are finding ways. Teams rather play. They're pulling their goalies early. They could pull their goalies earlier and probably have more confidence that they're going to tie it up than allow it. The Islanders have scored some empty net goals this year. Barzal's first of the year was an empty netter. You had Horvat. I think they had one more. But you got to find a way to bear down.
Well, it's time to dole out some experience points, buddy. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm giving Isaiah George 3,600. I'm just taking his number and timing it by 100.
That's clever. All right, I like that.
He's been impressive.
He's been, you know what? I'm going to bump that up another 2,000. I think he's been excellent. And you know what? How about $15,000 to Ilya Sorokin? Because despite what people may think, he had an outstanding week. He is in Vezina, candidate form right now. He looks like himself, and the more this season goes on, the more it looks like you can put that worry to bed about, last season kind of creeping into this year. It looks like he is fully back to where he is. So positive points there. Got to take at least 267 points away from the team as a whole, though, for giving up that 2-goal lead against the New Jersey Devils last night.
Dobson probably loses a couple this week.
He's got to lose at least 600.
I would have said 558, but yeah, 600.
Well, I almost forgot. Let's talk about real quick, that last play in overtime has the shooting lane.
Yeah.
Chooses to force a pass to Holmstrom in front of the net. I mean, take that shot, even if it doesn't go in. You got a shot at a rebound dropping right in front where you have guys crashing the net there. I think it's, and we're going to talk about this later, I know, but I think Noah Dobson is a little gun shy right now, and it might be a confidence issue, but we do have to break for Arthur Staples. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York on all your favorite streaming platforms. I'm going to take that break. We'll be right back.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest. And Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook. Or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Did you have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to go on the line with the great Arthur Staple from The Athletic. Arthur, welcome back to the program. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, guys. How we doing?
You brought back the Expos hat. I love that.
He doesn't ever take the Expos hat off.
Maybe he goes to bed with it. We don't know. But let's start off here talking about a little positive news for the New York Islanders after all these injuries. Isaiah George comes in, maybe because they were just a little too depleted and the options were limited, but he comes in and he earns Patrick Waugh's trust very early, looks great in the first few games here. What are you seeing at Isaiah George?
A kid that doesn't really feel a lot of fear or nerves. It seems like, it's funny. Talked to Dale Hunter's son, who was the coach of defense for London in the OHL, where George played the last 3 years, and they had a guy. I think they understood what they had in him really quick. He wasn't necessarily going to be the big point scorer, but I think he learned in his 3 years there how to become a reliable guy, knowing that that's probably the fastest path to the NHL, to be a guy with his skating ability, his physical tools, but also a guy who can shut down opposing teams, who plays a simple game. You can see he's got the wheels, and that certainly can translate into some offense. But I think for what the Islanders need of him right now, they need him to be steady, they need him to be simple, eat up some shifts, give a breather to guys like Dobson and Dobson and Ryan Pulock. And he's done that. It's certainly a surprise to see a guy come in who's played less than 10 pro games in his entire career and suddenly playing 24 minutes a night, who's not a top 10, top 15 pick. But what he's done is really impressive. And, it doesn't necessarily get noticed because there's not a lot of points and they're obviously not at full strength, but it's certainly a good sign going forward.
Let's move on to his D partner. You mentioned Dobson there. Just what are you seeing from Dobson defensively? And would you have concerns? We know he's going to get a long-term deal, but obviously the AAV is going to be pretty high. Would there be concerns there just with him not taking the defensive strides that I feel like he really has to take at this point in his career?
Stefan, I think with him, it seems like, last year he really put a lot on his plate when Pelech and Pulock and Mayfield were out. I think we saw a kid going back to Canadian Junior, the kid who played in back-to-back Memorial Cups, who was playing 30 minutes a night as a 16, 17-year-old, who showed he could handle that, ice water in his veins. I think he thrives in those kinds of scenarios, but I think now he's starting to realize, and I think maybe the Islanders are starting to realize, this guy needs a very steady partner. And, obviously with Romanov out, I think, the fact that they've only won, 1 or 2 games since that Romanov's missed, this guy is maybe not equally as important as Dobson, but he's very important to what they do. That pair, they can get them both signed going forward for a long time. Romanov is a really, really solid player back there, and I think that helps Dobson out a lot. I think the areas where you'd like to see Dobson kind of get back to that level we saw him at for a lot of last year is on the power play, being a little bit more assertive, a little bit more downhill there. He seems to be deferring a little too much for whatever reason. And I think his 5-on-5 play is really it's improved over the last couple of years, but it has plateaued a little bit. It does so far this season. He looks a little bit too much like the guy that was playing the last 10, 15 games into the playoffs last year, who looked like he was a little worn down. And I imagine that has a lot to do with not having a guy like Romanov there game in and game out. And when he gets back, if he can stay healthy, if that pair can stay healthy, I think you're going to see some improvement from Dobson, especially on the defensive side.
I agree with you there, Arthur. And let's just look at this past week as a whole. Would you consider this a success for a team who's battling through a ton of injuries, not only on the defense, but also on the forward side too, with Duclair and Barzal being out? They go 2-1-1 if you go back to the Ranger game. You get a good win on the road against Ottawa. They eke out the shootout win against Pittsburgh. And when you look at how depleted this team has been, is this finally maybe a little bump in the upswing for this team, or maybe they can kind of get back into the pack in the playoff conversation? Or is this a team who still needs a little more work to tread water, waiting for those players to come back?
I mean, it's such a mixed bag, Sean. It's really hard to categorize. If they had banked some of those points that they gave away before everybody got hurt, you could feel a little bit more optimistic about what they're doing now. And they have stabilized things a little bit, and it is encouraging to see with all those guys out that they're getting back to playing a much simpler game. Their defense at most times, if we discount a lot of the last 5 minutes of the third period, their defense overall this season has been pretty good, especially at even strength. So that has been encouraging that they've been able to continue that, basically missing their whole left side of their defense for the last, whatever it is, week plus. So, yeah, there are some encouraging signs. I think Semyon Varlamov having a second straight really good start with the win in Ottawa is also encouraging, because they definitely need both goalies playing well. But it's hard to feel fully confident that they can get back in the race, because some of their key guys are still a week or two or maybe even more away from returning. And they still do things like they did last night. It doesn't matter who you got on the ice. If you got a 3-1 lead with 4.5 minutes left, you got to get 2 points and you got to give 0 to the other team. It's feels, I'm sure for you guys, you probably talk about this every week for about the last 60 weeks. And I can't imagine that there's much more to discuss other than the incredible shock that it happens every single time out. But to do it, especially with the Devils now, they've given the Devils 3 points in these 2 games because of late goals that they've tied. This is a team that, if you're looking at the teams ahead of them in the Metro, Devils might be the shakiest one of the 4. So, you have a sneaking suspicion in the back of your mind when they give up that overtime goal last night after a bunch of chances in OT to win it, that one might come back to bite them if the Islanders do get themselves together and get back in the race in a meaningful way.
Ask you a hypothetical here. When Barzal comes back, with how Horvat has played with Lee and Pajot, is there any thought of maybe not putting Barzal back with Horvat?
No, because then you're putting him on the third line, because you're not breaking up the Siplikov, Nelson, Palmieri second line. And I think the Barzal Horvat connection wasn't great for a lot of the first 10 games before Barzal got hurt. They had a couple of good moments early on, but I think Duclair falling out really quick kind of hurt them a little bit, not finding the right person. I think the thing that maybe we've seen is that if Barzal goes back up there, that Anders Lee is not a fountain of youth situation, but he certainly looks a lot different than he did at the beginning of last season. Yeah. And it's a testament to the kind of guy that he is, how much work he puts in the off season. He's 34 years old now. I think we've been talking about him a lot as a potential buyout candidate, whatever it is at the end of next season or even next summer when he's got a year left on his deal. But this is a pretty proud guy, and there's a reason he's been a captain of some very successful teams here. He doesn't necessarily put himself above anything else. He knows how to adapt to certain situations, and he has been real good playing with Horvat. The encouragement is that if it's a Lee, Horvat, Barzal top line, you probably feel a bit better about that than maybe putting Holmstrom up there, who struggled a little bit, and when Duclair went out before Barzal was hurt. So, I think Barzal goes back to the top line because you need him back in the mix, getting his points, getting his comfort level up with Horvat again, and getting his touches. So, I would say definitely going back up there, but maybe now we've seen a guy who can play with the two of them, who can keep up a little bit in Anders Lee.
Yeah, I'm with you there too, Arthur. And just to go back to what we're talking about with the blown leads here, I mean, you talk about how we've been discussing this for maybe the last 60 weeks, but I want to get your point of view on that, right? Because it has happened so frequently. Now it's been happening over multiple coaching operations here, whether it was Lambert, now it's Wah, and more or less the same personnel under both coaches. And I guess I'd want to get your take on just what you're seeing out there and what you think is perhaps the root cause of why this continues to happen. Is it just a confidence thing? Is it just a lack of decision making when it comes to this? Because it just seems like they can't get out of their own way, and they find a different way to do it every time. You might even sympathize with how it went down last night with the puck going off a Hutton's skate, Pullock's stick blowing up in overtime. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I think confidence, the mental side of it is probably the biggest factor, because it's not like this is a bad group. You have the guys out there that you want. I think last night was one of the ones, and I think we saw it a couple times last year. One of the moments that kind of screamed to me, they're trying not to lose this game as opposed to being aggressive. I think you saw in Ottawa, the shot blocked by Scott Mayfield. He's out a little bit, challenging, kind of like a goalie. They get a good bounce, and Bo Horvat is quick on it, throws it right down towards the empty net, which 90% of NHL players can do these days. And boom, it's over with. You've extinguished the threat. Last night, you saw them kind of getting smaller and smaller in their 5-man set, and that is just a recipe for disaster, because there's just too many chances to have happened what happened, which is it goes off a skate, bounces the wrong way. That's what teams are looking for, is chaos in front of the net. And I think you saw everybody kind of back off Jack Hughes, not once, but twice. You're thinking somebody's got to go out there. Even if you leave a spot open, you've got a goalie who's playing well. Let him face a clear-sighted shot inside of the dots, maybe from 10 or 15 feet. He's going to give you a good chance to stop one of those. So the lack of aggressiveness, I think one of the things that we saw, is some fatigued key players last season. Again, with some injuries, you would see guys with way too much time on the clock trying to rag it along the wall and keep it moving with their feet, draw too many bodies to there to leave spots open. You'd rather take icings inside of 30 seconds, get the puck, get it off your stick, get it out of the zone. You could try to flip it if you've got time. So I think it's really a confidence issue. And I think a lot of it folds into what we see on the penalty kill too, of guys, once you fail a clear or you flub a chance to flip it high out of the zone, it gets in your head, and all of a sudden they come back in, and you're, like we said, whether it's 5-on-4 or 6-on-5, you're getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which doesn't help your goalie, doesn't help your ability to get the puck out of the zone. You're really, you're looking to kill as many seconds as you can. It's even a little bit different than a 5-on-4 during the middle of a game, because the clock is going to hit zero at some point if you just keep chipping it out of the zone or even trying to keep getting face-offs. So I think it seems like there's a little bit freezing up. I won't repeat the phrase that Patrick Waugh used after the game last night, but yeah, there's some clenching going on among the guys that are out there late. I think some of it, you do what you can personnel wise. I wouldn't have had Grant Hutton out there at all in that situation. I would have gone with, honestly, like, I know it's not done, I would have gone with 4 forwards. I would have put, Anders Lee, station him in front of his own net to try to clear some people out. It just seems to compound itself, and certainly against certain teams. Now it's 3 of these blown games late in regulation, either go to overtime or lose in regulation, like they did to the Devils early last season, kind of one of the signature ones where they blew the lead and then gave the game away inside of 5 minutes out in Newark. It's maddening. And, we talk about it all the time. We're the ones watching the games and at the games, and it's a small group of Islander fans. You imagine if this was the Leafs doing this, or the Canadians, or one of these big national teams, Elliot Friedman would devote an entire podcast episode to it.
Most likely.
But it's the Islanders, so people just kind of dismiss it. But it is, if you watch all of the times that this has happened, like you said, it's been slight little differences. I think the key through line is just a lack of confidence in the guys that you have out there late.
Speaking of a guy who has a lot of confidence, Maxim Siplikov, 15-game sample size. What do you make of his overall game, and what maybe more do you want to see from him going forward?
I mean, I really like his game. It is refreshing to see a guy like that come in kind of out of nowhere. Not a guy that anybody really knew a lot about, and he's got the right attitude. He seems very comfortable off the ice here, which is a big deal. On the ice, he's ready for anything. He's got the big body. I think maybe the one obvious factor is, try not to take too many careless penalties, especially in the third period. It's, I think if they had a deeper roster up front, you might see him drop off a few shifts now and again if he continues to do that. You see him take whatever it is, 7 minors already. But I think he'll get the hang of that, and I think he seems like he's a quick learner. And we saw him, I think maybe the first 5-10 games thinking he had a little more time and space to work with, as a lot of guys who play on the bigger sheet do, pulling up inside the zone and not really realizing that guys are going to be on you right away or maybe behind the net. And I think you've seen him get the puck off a stick quicker and kind of get his feet moving a little bit better. That the 3-1 goal last night was definitely an example of that. Got it off his stick, went, middle drive, occupied a Devils defenseman. I don't know if they teach that kind of stuff in the KHL, but they certainly teach it in the NHL, and he's a quick learner. So liked what I've seen from him. The fact that he's fitting in that spot with Nelson and Palmieri, that the Islanders really needed him to fit in because they don't really have a guy to fill that second line left wing role. It's been huge. And, again, another bright spot in an otherwise kind of blah first 15 games. But yeah, I like what I see from him.
No doubt, Arthur. And last one for me, speaking of bright spots, Ilya Sorokin not looking worse for the wear after that summer injury, huh? He's been outstanding.
Yeah, definitely a pleasant surprise. I think the secretive nature of a Lou Lamoriello organization doesn't really allow for any sort of in-depth discussion about what might have happened to him, when it happened, if that was something that was affecting him towards the end of last season. Whether we've heard about it or not, you can't really know for sure, but he certainly didn't look like himself for most of last year. And he looks like the guy from 2 years ago now. It's obviously a different team in front of him, not as talented, certainly not as good in their own zone, but he's definitely erased a few mistakes so far this year, which is good to see. And really important because Varlamov wasn't looking so sharp in those first few starts. So you can imagine that if it was Sorokin kind of still day to day as the season unfolded, and Varlamov having to play a bulk of the games, that would be a bit of a problem. They might not even be where they are right now. So that's huge for him. I think confidence wise for him too. He's not a young guy anymore, but he's kind of young NHL age wise, and I think they need him to be a guy who can steal some points because, we're looking at a team, even when everybody's healthy, that is still giving leads away, still having trouble scoring. So, yeah, I'm sure he's probably going to be experience a little more frustration, maybe being on the wrong side of a 1-0, 2-0 loss again as the course of the season goes on. But probably still a good sign for him for this season and for the long haul that he's healthy and playing as well as he has.
For sure. Well, Arthur, great to have you back on the show. Really appreciate your time and hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday night.
Got it, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Take care. All right, folks, that was the great Arthur Staple of The Athletic with some great insight on the New York Islanders. And before we take our next break, I'm going to tell you all about Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. And with that, we're going to break. When we come back, it's time for What's on Tap.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on right here. Hockey Night in New York, right into Center Station Bar and Grill, who presents this wonderful segment called What's on Tap. We're going to talk about what's going on for the Islanders this upcoming week. But before we do, fellas, Jay, Ed, so a lot of giggling going on behind the scenes there. What did we miss, pal? What's going on?
Yeah, really.
We fixed a little screen issue.
Oh, okay. There's a little issue behind the scenes.
Yeah,
we
were hyped when we fixed it.
All right, because you guys were having a ball over there. Just wanted to see what was going on.
There was a black bar
here
on the right side of the screen.
Oh, okay.
Nobody noticed.
Small victories here.
All right, fixing stuff on the fly.
Yeah.
Showbiz, baby.
It's all Jay.
All right, what's on tap for the Islanders? They are going out to Western Canada and some other cities that are more westerly of New York. And we'll start with Tuesday, the 12th, in Edmonton, 9 p.m. Stanley Cup finalists couldn't win. Almost mounted a huge comeback.
Almost.
But they didn't do that. And now Connor McDavid is back healthy.
Yes.
That's obviously huge
great.
for the Oilers, not great for the Islanders. What do you see in this matchup, pal?
You want to see how Isaiah George could get tested against the elite of elites? This is one of those games.
I like that angle.
Patrick Waugh does not want to shelter this kid, and he hasn't through the first 3 games he's played. But
right.
Sure, he's gone up against the Crosby and the Malkins, and credit to them, they're fantastic players. But Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, you're going to see what this kid's all about. Last time the Islanders were in Edmonton is actually Chris Knobloch's first NHL win. He was behind the bench, so they had made the coaching change. It's going to be a tough one, but like all these tough games, this is going to see what this team's made of with injuries. Can they rally? Can the depth score? Goaltending is going to be huge against those guys. They're trying to find a way to shut McDavid down. He's well rested, which is a problem. So you can't stop him. You just got to hope to contain him.
Nice use of the cliche
Thank
there.
you.
You didn't botch it up either.
No,
I'm proud
I
of you, buddy.
yeah,
So do you go right back to Sorokin for this one?
I would.
Okay.
I think you start Sorokin 3 of 4 every time. I like the way Varlamov's played. Arthur mentioned that. That's huge. That's very important. You got to, when you're throwing points away like the Islanders had so far through 15 games, you got to put your goalie out there that gives you the best chance to win every night. It is Sorokin. He's showing that he's healthy. I would throw him right back out there.
Okay. Islanders get the night off on Wednesday, go into Vancouver on Thursday. Bring your coffee because that is a 10 p.m. start Eastern time. Another tough team out there in the West. What do you see with the Canucks?
Well, Brock Besser's out a while. So out indefinitely with an injury, which not good for Vancouver, but very good for the Islanders. It's one we've talked about a lot with goaltending and Demko being back. I think Demko was actually pulled for the first time. I don't think it was in his career, but with their new coach. And yeah, they're a little bit shaky. They're a good team, but Pettersson has struggled. Like, this is the time to get this Canucks team. They haven't really caught so much fire. You still have guys like Quinn Hughes, Pettersson. When he figures it out, he gets going. They're a talented team, but I think for the Islanders, and it depends what they do against Edmonton, got to christen it against this Vancouver Canucks team. Test their goaltending, but you can't leave guys wide open on the power play. Can't leave guys wide open.
True.
Remember last time they were in Vancouver, they blew a lead again. I forgot the exact score. That was also the game where I think JT Miller hit a slap shot right into a teammate's face. Kuzmenko in the face, and he left the game. I don't know why I remember the dumb stuff, but it was a bad game for the Islanders in sense of blowing the leads, and you've got to find a way to put pressure on this Vancouver Canucks team right now.
Yes, you do. And then to round out the week, Saturday, November 16th, the Islanders go all the way out west on the west coast of the United States to play the Seattle Kraken. That is a 4 p.m. Eastern time start. And we will be having a viewing party once again at Center Station Bar and Grill, where Michael Carver, the former host of Isle Seat Podcast and currently of Sports Grid, will be filling in for your shoes while you're unavailable. I
will be taking a red eye back after that game.
Oh, is that right?
Tonight. I'm 11 o'clock red eye, coming back. But this is Seattle team one. It's always great to see Jordan Eberle. This is a guy that meant a lot to the guys in the room. I know him and Barzal are so close. And they're a team that's struggling as well. They're the first team the Islanders will face on this road trip that's not in the playoffs right now. Okay. So, like the Islanders, they haven't found consistency in their game. They have Bilesma as their coach. First time the Islanders will face them with the new coach. And another one of those teams that they haven't really found their way. Their identity is a little bit confusing at this point. So that's one of those games where the Islanders have to do what they don't do and blow leads, get out early, score. Last time they were in Seattle was the game where Pulock took like 2 straight penalties and they scored. I think they allowed 3 or 4 power play goals in that one. That was also one of that trip was the trip that Wallstrom saved Lambert's job.
Oh, okay.
That was the end of the trip with Calgary. But another thing about Seattle is that was a back-to-back. And I remember asking him before the game if he was going to, how do you control, you're not getting the most out of certain guys. How do you fix that? And he goes, we control ice time, things like that. And then after that game, they lose. And I asked him again, he goes, well, it was a back-to-back. We're not going to cut people's ice time. So it was an awkward post-game there in Seattle. But if you're talking about seeing what the Islanders do earlier in the week, if they're not going to beat the teams that are in a playoff spot, You got to beat the teams that aren't, and Seattle's at one of those teams.
That would be nice. Maybe an opportunity to make up for past mistakes, as you mentioned, the comeback versus Vancouver, Seattle here. So perhaps this is a little road trip where the team can bond and, get on the same page and fight for some points. And
get Romanov coming back. It doesn't matter what game he comes back.
Right. The fact that he'll be on the plane is good.
He might not provide the offense that Dobson does, but the Islanders are missing that kind of tenacious guy. And you lose Clutterbuck this summer, and you're thinking they didn't fill that hole. And when Romanov's out of the lineup, it doesn't seem like anyone's really bringing that physical element that I'm willing to do anything possible to get a win. So getting him back is gonna boost this group. So hopefully for the Islanders' sake, it's against Edmonton. But if not, you're hoping that it's before that game against Seattle.
Without a doubt. So once again, 3 tough games coming up this week. And, of course, rounding it out at Center Station Bar and Grill for a viewing party for the Islanders versus Kraken game. Come on down. It's going to be a good time. So that will do it for What's on Tap, presented by Center Station Bar and Grill. Catch great food, drinks, and Islanders games and live events at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center. And now it's time to talk about some heroes. Still getting used to this new track that we have for it. But yes, it's time for Hero of the Week, and I am going to start off here, and there's a couple of nominees for me, a couple of honorable mentions, but the one I ultimately decided to go with was Isaiah George, the new kid on the block, because, again, I was a little, I suppose, not pessimistic, but I suppose, skeptical of how he would perform when they brought him up. Again, I thought it was really based off of necessity. Bolduc crashed and burned when he came up, and it was kind of like, all right, what do we have left here on the left side? They bring up George, and what a pleasant surprise he's been. Watt plays it safe in that first period against the Penguins, but then he kind of unleashes
Never
him
did
after
it again.
that.
Yeah.
Correct. And he's been logging well over 20 minutes with Noah Dobson in the 2 games after that, and he's looked excellent. He looks poised. He looks confident. I rattled off these words earlier in the show, but I'm just so impressed with how well he's looked. And maybe he doesn't have the same model game, but this circumstance reminds me a lot of when the Islanders brought up Devon Taves when Thomas Hickey went down. And you were
wondering,
friend
of the show, Thomas Hickey.
Friend of the show, that's right. But you were wondering if he was going to be ready, right? And they were saying great things about Taves down in the AHL. It was only a matter of time until he became a player. He finally got his opportunity and never looked back. He became a staple on the Islanders roster and then went on to do some other pretty good things after that off the Islanders roster. But you have George coming in here, gets a few games in, and just almost a godsend, not to be dramatic, but I mean, just to settle down that first pairing with Dobson, right, and just to look so comfortable, like he's been playing in the NHL for a season or two, right? And it looks like he's not going to let go of a spot in the roster. We'll see if he sticks next to Dobson when Romanov comes back. But just so impressed with his game. Yes, the sample size is small, but if he can continue to play the way he's playing now, I think it's going to prove great for the Islanders.
And he's 20 years old.
He's a young guy.
Which means if they win the Stanley Cup, he can't drink. Anyway,
and obviously that's the first concern. So.
I mean, listen, you want to drink? I guess they could go to Canada and drink. But
there you go.
You teed me up for one time when I just went top shelf because Patrick Waugh played George and he didn't hold him back.
He did. He's the coach.
And talking when yes, he is the coach. That is a fact. But the decision to bring George up, I do believe Waugh had a big say in it. He told us. They were debating the age, and Waugh said to Lou, listen, when I got called up, I was 20, and my teammates were doing that in their pants, probably seeing me between the pipes. And he goes, so pooping. We're going to see what this kid's got. Yes, yeah. Pooping. But in that first game, looking back, I'm not trying to say that Trotz wouldn't have played him, but early on in a game against Crosby and Malkin, George is probably getting sheltered. And then when he makes that mistake early in the third period of a close game, George is probably not seeing the ice for the rest of the game. What does Waugh do? First off, Waugh starts him off on the bottom pairing with Hutton, quickly within 5-6 minutes, sees something that he loves, which he told us was his ability to play with the puck, his ability to skate. He's an Adam Pelech in his prime-esque player in terms of, I call him an escape artist. Okay. He's shifty, he can make those moves to get out of the zone, things like that, and he's on the money passes, things like that. But he plays him like that, he shows the trust, he gets a 40-second shift in overtime of that game. Again, 20 years old, 5th ever professional game. And then he builds on it and says, you know what, he deserved it. Right. He's going to play with Dobson the next game. Ends up playing, 23-59? It's a lot.
And he saw overtime last night as well.
And then he saw overtime. I think it was 20 so second shift. So credit to Waugh as my hero because he saw something early in this kid. And instead of taking baby steps with Isaiah, he said, have at it. Go for it. And Isaiah hasn't yet made him make that, think that was a mistake to do. And anything, it's saving the franchise in a sense where all these guys are hurt. You call Boldig up, he fails. What are you going to do? You're going to have to go trade assets. You're going to have to waste assets, go get someone or claim someone off waivers. Not only is it a short-term fix with George, but now you're thinking, all right, when everyone's healthy and comes back, is Mike Riley on the outside looking in? Is Mike Riley now not being brought back next year? Is like this affects this franchise for the next 5+ years.
Sure, and at the very least, they can take their time potentially with Riley, depending on how things shake out with the rest of the lineup. But maybe he's a guy they don't have to rush back if George looks so well on that left side and Romanov comes back.
Even Romanov, even looking last year, like Mayfield played through an injury because he had to with all the injuries.
Right.
The fact that Cholowski and Hutton are playing acceptable, if George was a failure when he gets called up, remember, Romanov came back from missing 3 games to play in a game and then got hurt in that game, and because they were down 3 guys, came back. That was what they did with Mayfield last year in a sense.
Yeah.
And he went back in. Now, maybe Romanov was 80% the last 4 games. But because George is playing so well, they said, let's wait till you're like, we don't need you at this second. And I think that maybe that might play into it.
I feel like they want to get they don't want all 3 of those guys in there right now, George, Cholowski, and Hutton.
For sure, but I think Romanov's going to be a long-term investment, and there's no if they don't have to quote unquote rush him back and play at 90%.
Cholowski has the only 2 goals from defensemen this year, so
credit to him.
Credit to him. So, folks, that'll do it for Hero of the Week. Isaiah George and Patrick Waugh are your heroes, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Isles Fix. That's right, Islanders country. Get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at islesfix.substack.com. And now it's time to go to the Snake Den.
Welcome to the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Adonis.
That's right, folks. It's time for the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Adonis. Jake, how we doing, pal?
I'm doing good. I got a little different look today. I brought my glasses.
You look very well studied.
Thank you. Yes.
Very intelligent.
I might
tonight.
not be though.
Are you going to prove it tonight with your take?
I might.
Well, first before you do the take, you have the same hat as his shirt, so you should take your shirt off and put his shirt on.
I would rather not do that right now.
I don't think we should do that on camera.
But thank you for the suggestion.
No problem.
Yes.
That's right. I didn't even put that together.
That's
us.
Look at
us.
That's me not paying attention to the right things. I just looked. I'm like, oh, that matches.
You've been throwing out some weird ones today.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long week.
Right. Jake, what's your take?
Yeah, so it goes to the blown leads, and I know this is a big topic of conversation. Unfortunately, a topic of conversation that's been had so many times over the past few years. And it's happening under multiple coaches, so I think it goes to prove that this has to be a mental thing.
Okay.
A lack of confidence. It's insane to blow that many leads, 2-goal, 3-goal leads. It doesn't matter. It's clearly something going on mentally because we look at the team under Barry Trotz. They're known for locking down those leads.
Absolutely.
It's the same roster.
Essentially.
So something happened where it happened a couple of times, and now it's just, okay, we have this lead. Now it's in their head. And when you play with something in your head like that, it's not great. And I think that it's not going to be good for them going forward. They need to break this habit sooner rather than later, which obviously is easier said than done.
Sure. Clearly.
But, if you're doing that, you go into the playoffs, you're not going to be able to win a round. And the last 2 years, they haven't been able to win a round.
I don't mean to interrupt the Snake Den, but I've never seen Patrick Waugh and Jake in the same room, and he brings up confidence. And Patrick Waugh brought up confidence, and this is what he had to say about them blowing leads.
Well, first of all, it's a matter of confidence. That's the first thing. And secondly, we need to defend better around our net. They pick up rebounds. So we got to find a way to box them out and put our hands on those pucks and do a little bit better job. We can't throw pucks away. We got to eat those pucks and swarm it and kill the clock. You play against the clock. When they pull the goalie, it's a clock. It was a minute 6, I think, or 10, whatever it was, and you need to kill the clock. So, it's don't get rid of the puck. Eat the puck if you don't have a play. And these are things that I think I hope that more we're going to be exposed, more we're going to feel confident. I'm watching a lot of teams. They're successful because they're good in those battles. They're swarming well, and they find ways to eat the puck and find a way to battle for those rebounds and get those puck out, and that's how they score goals.
So, yeah, like I said, I've never seen you and Waugh in the same room, but same mindset there because you nailed it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that I might be Patrick Waugh. Unfortunately, I'm not, though.
That's a shame.
I mean, listen, we'd rather have Patrick Ross sitting there. Probably, no offense to
It's all right.
Imagine.
I mean, he's got to get to Edmonton, so
that is true.
That probably dispels any sort of coincidence there.
I think that with talking about Edmonton, this West Coast trip coming up is so vital to this team.
Okay,
I mean, we talk about the injuries on the show with everybody being out. This is a time where they could go out, bond, and if they string some points together out west and they come back home, I think it'll be great for this team going forward.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fact that they were able to get two wins this week, string them together and kind of just, kind of stay above water, or at least treading water, right? Because it looked like they were going to lose that game to Pittsburgh. And if they drop that game, then it's looking pretty bleak because you still have the injuries. You look at another game lost to a rival there on home ice.
Division rival, yeah.
And what did I say?
No, you said rival. But no, I'm putting more of emphasis on division, like.
Fair enough.
We talked about with the Devils giving points away.
Yes,
you give points to Pittsburgh. That's not good.
So you look at it that way, and then all of a sudden you go into Ottawa, a team that the Islanders have struggled against historically, as I've noted, and it could have ended up being a pretty poor week. Now, granted, it ended with a very, very sour taste, obviously, with giving up those points to the Devils. But maybe going out in this West Coast swing, they have the ability to perhaps beat a couple of tough teams in Edmonton and Vancouver, and they're feeling a little better about themselves. You knock a couple more days off of the injuries to Barzal and Duclair and Pelech, and then maybe they continue to tread water when they come back, because that's what this all is right now. I mean, there's been some promising looks where you have guys like Leon Pajot looking good next to Horvat.
Really good.
You got Horvat kind of taking the team on his back, skaters-wise, because Sorokin's already been doing all the work.
I say hopefully Horvat doesn't need back surgery after this year.
Right. But Horvat's been excellent in a leadership role, taking over with those two guys going out. And you have to hope that they continue to solidify things. And as far as the confidence goes with the blown leads, and you have Waugh kind of emphasizing more than once in that quote about eating the puck. And it just seems like, in a lot of situations here, particularly with the defensemen, and I'll lump Dobson in here, but also he was talking about Hutton. Yeah, yes, he is. He is every game. But you have Hutton there. He's talking about that play where he has the puck behind the net, and he could have just shaved some seconds off, ate the puck, maybe looked for an outlet. Instead, it was almost indecisive in the sense that, he's like, all right, I'm going to rim this puck around the boards, but he did it with not nearly enough force where it had any chance of exiting the zone. So it's an easy keep at the blue line for the Devils. They get set, and it eventually leads to the goal that goes off a Hutton skate here. And you have all these decisions, even in overtime, where there's been multiple decisions by Dobson, throughout this season so far in the early going, where he's made some questionable mistakes, and sometimes they look small. Like last night, where he has the shooting lane coming in on that rush just before the Devils go ahead and win. He has a clear lane to shoot the puck. He sees Holmstrom in front with a guy draped on him, and he says to himself, I'm going to try to force this pass instead of putting the puck on net. Maybe you get a rebound, maybe you don't, but it seems like a lot of these decisions that these guys have been making have just turned out to be cataclysmic, where they're literally losing points and giving away points in the standings. And, you see these decisions sometimes and they're forgivable, like, it didn't amount to much.
Right.
But it seems like in these early, 15 games where they're amounting to a lot and they're really hurting this team.
And you feel bad for Hutton. The tying goal goes off his skate, and he's in perfect spots. That's one thing we didn't talk about yet is Hutton's mistake is, I'm in the right spot, I'm tying up the guy, and it just goes off my skate, whereas Dobson not tying up Mercer. Making
he's there,
those mistakes.
But
right, because everyone takes the screenshots, because that's what people do on Twitter. Well, he's in the right spot. He's there.
Right.
But if you, I'm not calling Dobson
Box
a cone,
him
but if
out,
you take any object that doesn't move and you put it there, it's not going to get the job done. You got to make the play.
Right.
And Hutton running it around, throwing it around, it's weird. You could either be really aggressive and just throw the puck down the ice, or what Waugh is saying is don't do that. Don't rush to do that. It's not a bad play if you get it out, and that's great. But he's saying when you pull the goalie, you're not facing that team anymore. You're battling the clock. That's all it is. Eat the clock. So he's saying just keep it against the boards, play that battle, and it's tough when it's a guy like that, because even Waugh said, he goes, but come on, it's he hasn't played with us a lot.
Right.
Whereas opposed to Dobson, who's been with Waugh since Waugh's been here, these are mistakes that a guy you're gonna have to pay a lot of money to can't be making at this point, because you have to be able to trust him in these big moments. He was on the ice for the last 3 Devil goals yesterday.
Not great.
Not great.
Not great. Well, that's it for the Snake Den. It's time to answer some questions.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead, ask us a question.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to ask us a question during the wonderful Questions Brewing segment, and this is where I ask Ed how him and Jay are doing this evening. How you guys faring tonight?
Fantastic, as Stefen would say.
Is that
that's
right?
Sean's word. That's not my word.
No, that's your
It's
word.
kind of spread around the show.
No.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
No. Well, speaking of Stefen, we're going to start off with some of his questions on Twitter that he polled people.
Let's have at it.
And we're starting off with Mike Metzapelle, who asks, with Dobson seeming to be a liability in the defensive zone, why is he always on the ice during 6-on-5 situations? I guess the same question can be asked for the PK.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think right now with injuries, I look back at the shift chart, and Mayfield actually hadn't played the shift prior. He got in a breather. So it is questionable. Obviously, Waz going to trust Dobson because once he takes Dobson out of those situations, that's a confidence killer. And if Wad really believes in Dobson, which he does, you got to hope that he throws him out there and he's going to make the big play, and that builds confidence. I think that's why he's done it. Unfortunately for the Islanders, it's over and over again where they're putting him out there, but I think the biggest reason, you could add to that if you want, is just if they don't do it, the message it sends to Dobson.
Well, not only that, but you talk about Mayfield getting a breath, right? What are your other options? Because Pelech and Bullock, you know what I mean? You could get Bullock out there, but, Pelech's not around, and then you have Hutton and Cholowski, right? So you have to figure in that sort of situation that Waz options were limited. So maybe at full health, Dobson isn't out there because of what we've seen previously.
Next up from Dennis Beauregard on Twitter. He says, honestly, when was the last time this team had a superstar player? For a New York team, it's way overdue.
Yeah, it really depends on your definition of superstar. I guess.
Right.
I guess you would say Tavares, probably superstar, because I don't think you put elite. To me, elite and superstar are different. Like, I feel like Barzal is elite, but I don't believe Barzal is a superstar.
Well, how do we categorize Ilya Sorokin?
Okay, that's fair, but we're talking about on the ice superstar in terms of scoring goals, and I wish Sorokin can score goals. Yes, he is by far a superstar, but if we're talking about non-goalies, it's probably Tavares.
John Tavares was the last high-end brand name player they've had, and I know there's been arguments over the years now about Barzal, and he hasn't really broken the mold to be that 90 to 100 point player. Right. Maybe that's still in front of us. I don't know, but yeah, I guess Tavares might be that guy. Going back even further, it's tough. I mean, this has been a team where they kind of never have that just surefire elite of the elite players, and not every team gets those. And I mean, it's a fair question, and there's probably not one on the team now unless you lump Sorokin in there.
What I will say, though, until we move to the next one, is most teams that have those superstars drafted those superstars with a first-round pick. That's not even a knock on Luke, because the trades he's made has been good, but
sure.
Talking about McDavid and Draisaitl and McKinnon and Crosby, I mean, they're all drafted.
And most of them are drafted in the top 5 as well.
Right. Lundqvist, I know, was a really late pick, but it happens. Isaiah George.
Yes. Isaiah George. Right. Sure. We'll go with that. All right, Ed.
Next up from DTMR, he asks, why so little faith in the fourth line? K-Mac and Fasching aren't liabilities.
It's a good point. I think you've seen recently with all the injuries that they've played a little bit more. You saw Martin come out of the rotation. I know Fasching hasn't played the last 2. It's been Martin there. And Wahlstrom scored. So, I think it's the faith is that you trust McLean, but maybe you don't trust his line mates. And then you're not going to, you could double shift McLean, but you're not going to throw the line out there. I don't want to say they have been liabilities, but at the same time, defensively, I don't think there's trust there, just because we still don't know what Wahlstrom really is. We know Martin's taken steps back. And to be honest, McLean is a great guy to talk to. He was great last year. We haven't really seen him play at that level yet. And they have other guys that are going. So why play those guys when you trust the other guys more?
Well, the funny thing about the fourth line, it was called the identity line for so long. Right now, it's just literally struggling to find an identity.
It's the fourth line.
Yeah, is just, we don't know what we have yet, in the sense that they're already heavily, buying into an experiment on Oliver Wahlstrom down there, right? And that's had very mixed results. You touch on McLean, you touch on Cizikas, who's now bounced, up and down the lineup because of the injuries, and it's kind of the forgotten line, in a sense that it doesn't have 3 surefire guys that are going to be in the lineup every night. It's hard to gauge what they're going to bring every night and whether they're going to bring it consistently. So I think it's kind of forced Wah to lean a little more heavily on the top 9 of the lineup until he really feels more comfortable with the 3 guys he has there.
And you talk about defensively, and too, is you said that fourth line is that shutdown line, and that was pretty much their only shutdown line. Now you're looking at the other three lines where Cizikas line's a shutdown line. Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri is a great defender. Anders Lee and Pajot are smart players. So you don't need to fill you can put the first line out there the way it is right now late in a game. It might not work for the Bruin leads, but I don't think they're so relying on their fourth line anymore to be that shutdown line. Three lines can do it.
Right. Next from Angie Wilburn on Twitter asks, why does it feel like they run into a mental roadblock every time they have the lead?
Well, I think that's everything that we've discussed, between Jake, between Stefen here, and even Arthur earlier, is, once you kind of get into a rut with something that happens, time and time again, I mean, you can be as professional an athlete as possible. That stuff is still going to seep into your head, and then it's just a matter of how much you're going to let it affect your game, right? And I think Arthur made some great points that they do become very small in front of the net. And they really do a great job of allowing teams to just set up in the zone
and cycle and not clear. It starts with the failed clear.
Exactly.
What happens. Yeah.
I mean, think about all the times that the Islanders have been down 6-on-5 in the last 2 years, and think about how often they literally were just able to get the puck out of the zone.
You're probably counting your hand.
Right. I mean, it's just extended zone time where you're literally sitting there in your seat, your chair, your couch, whatever it is, and you're like, this is just a matter of time. Because they get such extended zone time. They're getting exhausted out there because they can't change, because they haven't been able to clear the zone. And it's just an inevitability. And I think that these guys have the talent, they have the ability, but for whatever reason, and whether it's a little bit of bad luck with a puck going off a guy's skate like last night, but you have also the indecision, because that's the thing too. Not only are they gripping their sticks tight, but it's also going to factor into their decision making in these situations, right? Where if you're at the top of your game, or at least if you're feeling comfortable, you're not even thinking. You're just instinctively making that next play, and it's usually the right one. But if you're thinking a little bit before the puck even gets to your stick, that's when you're like, and you're wondering where the puck's going to go, and that's when you're screwing up the play. And I think that has a lot to do with it, and that's why they find themselves in the situation they're in.
I remember when we were in Vancouver last year, they blew that lead there. I think it was part of a big losing streak. It was part of a big losing streak for them. Ethan Sears of the Post, friend of the show, asked Horvat, did you think like, here we go again? Mm-hmm. And he said yes. Mm-hmm. And what Arthur said is they're playing not to lose, not playing to win. And that Watt told us day of, we asked him, what are you going to do to help fix the blown leads part, which didn't end up getting fixed. He said, like in football, we want to possess. We want to run the clock out, things like that. And they just haven't done that.
Right.
Next up from Tom Boyle, he asks, I heard that the NHL is going to an 84-game schedule next season. Is this true?
I know that the thought has been raised.
I think it's going to happen
CBA.
for the next CBA, which is not next year. I think it's the year after.
And I think there's a very distinct possibility of that. Yeah,
I think it's happening.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know anyone that would argue that the players probably, it sets the schedule up where you're not. Oh, you're going to play this guy 3 times. It makes it even. More money for revenue.
Money for everyone.
Yeah, it's gonna. If there's anything that's going to happen, that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Al72, with all the excitement around George, what do you think his ceiling is, and do you have a comparable player?
Yeah. Well, I know he grew up loving Chris Letang and loving Miro Heiskanen, stars. But from the day one I saw him at rookie camp, shutting down odd man rushes, using his strung stick, escape artist in his own zone, I said, that's Adam Pelech. That is Adam Pelech's replacement. And, I didn't think it would be a year. But he has that innate ability to just see the play. Gap control is great. So I think Adam Pelech is the perfect comparison there. And I think if George could add some offense too, that'll be big for him. But in terms of shutdown ability, he's Adam Pelech.
I think it's a great start and a good comparable to begin with. I would like to see you talk about the offense there. I think there's at least possibility, just because he's made some nifty plays with that puck, moving the puck on his stick, and then the way he's dished the puck as well. He seems like a very heady player. So again, it's hard to gauge with 3 games under his belt, right? But so far, so very good. And if at the very least he's even an Adam Pelech light in Adam Pelech's prime, I mean, that's a great player to have in your team. That's a middle pairing defenseman right there.
He could be on this team for 18 more years.
He could.
And that solves and people have also compared him to Nick Leddy, which I would say is false, because Leddy was this puck carrier he was more offensive based. But in today's day and age, if you have defensemen that could skate the puck up, but also just the stretch passes. Day one,
Right.
we always talk about playing fast, and
Right.
you don't have to be the fast skater to play fast. You just got to think fast.
Right.
And George thinks fast. His ability to walk the blue line, we've seen a couple of times. Not saying he's Cale Makar, but those are valuable attributes that you can't teach. So, yeah, I think sky's the limit for him, but if he could be an Adam Pelech guy and bring more offense, they got a very good player to add to the Romanov, to the Dobson. Again, you look at this defense is old. Pelech's over 30, Pulock's over 30, Mayfield's over 30, Riley's over 30. You need those young guns to come up there, and having Dobson, who's 24, and Romanov is 24, turning 25, to get a 20-year-old in there, to have three guys you can rely on for the next 5-6 plus years, that's important.
Yeah. Let's see what else he does.
Well, that leads into the next question. It is indeed the Isaiah George show tonight. Tom Boyle asks, when the Islanders defense gets healthy, do you see George getting sent down, or does he stay with the lineup?
I think he's already sold his apartment in Bridgeport.
Wow.
So this is the way I look at it is Sebastian Aho is here fighting with Bolduc. Aho was a better Bolduc. That's why I got the chance to be the seventh guy or starting the lineup. Then they bring Mike Riley in, who's a better Aho. And while the Riley and George are not comparisons in terms of players and styles, George is a better option than Riley. As much as what Riley can do, George is going to win that job probably, and Riley becomes your seventh guy. There's no point in George being a seventh guy. He's waiver exempt, send him back down to play every day.
Right.
But he's been he hasn't just played bottom minutes and he's a catalyst now in the success of this team.
He's not just a body filling out the defensive
He's a somebody.
Very good, yes.
I believe that was our last one, actually.
Well, that'll do it.
Then that'll do it.
Then. How about that? Well, that means unless you got anything else to say.
Oh, well, DTMR just put it before the show ends.
Oh.
Stick taps to Donnie Bagels.
Oh, yes, we should talk about
yes, Donnie Bagels. Sure. Yeah, so Donnie announced on Twitter today that he's stepped away from the Huntington Blue Line Deli and Bagels location, which is sad for all of us because it was a great hub for Islander fans to gather, get great food, and just great Islander chat. And what a great guy Donnie Bagels is over there. I've developed a very close friendship with him over the years, just meeting him through this program and partnering up, and I have nothing but amazing things to say about him. It's very sad that he's moved on from Blue Line, but I don't think it's the last we've seen of him. But big stick taps to Donnie just for doing an outstanding job, not just running the deli over there, but bringing the Islander community together, doing all the charitable work that he did, especially during COVID. I saw you brought that up on Twitter.
The biggest thing,
supporting the everybody who was helping out there during a very tough time, obviously in everybody's lives. And again, nothing but great things to say about Donnie. He is a top class man.
Yeah, we share the last name, but we're not related. We say brother from another mother. But no, from when I first started, I remember texting him like I was new to the beat or I wanted to be on the beat. He's like, hey, go for it. Like, sky's the limit. We had great conversations, and he's been nothing but supportive. But you talk about it. He opened the store like 2 weeks before COVID hit.
Right.
And you're thinking, for most businesses, that's a death sentence.
Right.
He kept it open. He was buying paper towels and toilet paper and giving that out for free. And just an amazing human being. And we wish him nothing but the best. I don't think it's the last. I think we'll see him bounce back. But anyone that's an Islander fan that's gotten to meet him or just knows his name, it's because of all the positive things he's done. So sick taps to him.
And Denny Bellotto on YouTube just chimed in and he asked, what happens to the bagel store now? So as far as we know, it's still there. It's still there.
It's just not Donnie's anymore. That's essentially the case there. So yeah, he's a bagel boss now in Hewlett. So if you want to go say hello, he'll be over there. He'll be happy to talk Islanders with you, and that's where that stands now. But thank you for the question. And that will do it for Questions Brewing. And before we wrap the show, I want to remind everybody that we have started a Patreon here at Hockey Night in New York that you can check out at patreon.com/HockeyNightNY, featuring exclusive content, featuring Q&As, columns, videos behind the scenes, merch and partner discounts, and even an invitation to hang out with us here at Florida Media in Rockville Center while we air the show live. Fun time. We already had Jack come down and do that. He had a great time. Looking forward to have some more people down here, but it's a great way to support what we do here at Hockey Night New York, so please check it out and give it some consideration. We actually recorded some content for it earlier that we'll be blasting out soon, so check out patreon.com/HockeyNightNY, and with that we can wrap this thing up. All right, folks, want to send a big thanks out to Arthur Staple of The Athletic for joining us here for a great segment on Hockey Night in New York. Want to send a big thanks to our sponsors, starting with Main Street Board Game Cafe. Check them out at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at mainstboardgamecafe.com. Also, a big thanks to Center Station Bar and Grill. Head on down to 279A Sunrise Highway for Isles games, live music, karaoke, comedy shows, and more in Rockville Center. Also a big thanks to Razor and Kniff Attorneys at Law. Nobody likes going to court, but hey, if you have to, call 212-LAW 1500 for a free consultation. And folks, if you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show on all your favorite platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, all over the place. Stefan Rosner, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me also all over the place.
Yes.
On Twitter, X, it's Stefan_Rosner, STEFEN_Rosner, NHL.com, the hockey news in my brand new Substack, The L Monsters, Monday through Friday newsletter, exclusive content, interviews, behind the scenes, and so much more. That's at TheLMonsters.com.
There you go. You can also follow myself on Twitter at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY. You can check out the website at HockeyNightNY.com, where we have great articles, great pieces covering the team from our man Dylan over here hanging out with us. That's right, Noah and the rest of the team. All good stuff there. And folks, we're going to keep this train rolling week after week. We got the viewing party next week at Center Station Bar and Grill here in Rockville Center. So definitely come down, hang out. Going to be a good time and hopefully a good hockey game.
We'll see.
So with all of that, for Stefan, for Jake the Snake, for Edzo, for Jay, for everybody at Hockey Night in New York, we've been Hockey Night in New York. We will see you next week.